see. And we're live. Tamaj Bio Arisht. Okay, Akarja, Fulcha Arash, welcome back, everybody. We've had a long, hot summer off. We haven't done any of these for a while. I'm back tonight with, we have Karen here, our regular contributor, and I'm delighted to say, Taluhur Oram Anocht, I'm delighted that we have a couple of our younger members of the population who have been, and they're quite active. Some of them are active in demonstrations and street politics recently, and they've been attracted to the sort of populist, if you want to call it that, cause, and they're not bought off by the mainstream media thing. So we have Charlotte and Alex. Alex, I know you've done a few. You're active in St. Stephen's Green every week. Do you want to just give us a wee quick? Well, we're going to run down basically. We're going to talk about sort of housing, immigration, COVID, and the hysteria around the lockdown, and the fact that the media have everybody kind of brainwashed into saying that lockdowns are the only way to go. Okay, Alex, give us a wee quick introduction of who you are.
Yeah, so I'm Alex. I'm 20 and I'm from Dublin. I'm a student. For the last few months, I've been speaking out about the whole COVID situation, basically how the government's handled anything, but more so how it's impacted on people, and not just everyone, but especially on young people, because it'll be wrong to say we've had a tough year. It'd be more accurate to say we've unwillingly had a year and a half of our lives taken away with everything that's happened, with regards business implications, college implications, and just life in general. I mean, that's not as a result of a pandemic per se. It's as a result of how the situation's been handled by the government. So over the last few months, I started a group called Irie Machnahoiga, who've been meeting in Stephen's Green weekly. Basically, it's more so than anything, it's a support network that young people can come and talk about how they've been impacted as a result of everything that's happened over the last few months.
Great stuff. And you mentioned a few things there about the impact it's having on young people, and I'd like to be touching things like mental health. That's a big time affected with this, and the cruel. People say this is a cruel virus. It's maybe more accurate to say the reaction to it, and not letting families see loved ones who are suffering from it. Maybe that's a more cruel definition of what's going on. Karen, everybody is well acquainted with yourself, but I'll just introduce Charlotte. Charlotte, yeah, you met up with us a couple of weeks ago in Drogheda. We were doing a wee bit of a leaflet and canvas, and it was great. You're very welcome to come along. It was refreshing to have somebody with your of your age. Do you want to just give us a wee quick introduction of yourself? Or?
Yeah, so I'm 17. I'm going to be starting college in September. I first got interested in politics, obviously, with the start of lockdown, and a lot of people kind of voted to the corruption of the world, government, and I, found obviously the Freedom Party, and I got very interested in it, and wanted to do some stuff over summer, and then I got to meet Cathal, and I hope to do more with the Freedom Party, but I think
it didn't scare you off.
No. Our generation at the moment, they're all so angry about the lockdowns, but they don't know what to do with that anger. They don't know whether to comply or not to comply, and they can't see forward. They can't see that if they do fight this in the long term, it is better for them. But they just want to go on holidays and have an easy life, unfortunately, but it's not going to get much easier by complying.
Yeah, good point. You said they're angry about the lockdown, obviously, but they don't. There's nobody politically that they can sort of hang their hat on. Karen, Fulcha Arash, you met Charlotte with a couple of weeks ago with myself and a few others of the party. What's your take briefly before we kick off? I mean, I know obviously you're totally anti-lockdown, as we all would be. What's your take? How's your summer been, and what's the crack?
Our summer, I mean, it's great to be back. We got stuck in straight away in June and July. We took a break in August, and we got stuck back in. We don't waste time to, once we had a break, we got back out again in the streets there about 2 weeks ago, and then Charlotte joined us there. It's great to see young people, involved in politics, even taking interest in politics, because I personally wouldn't have done that at, such a young age. It was much later in life for me, probably in my 40s. So it's great to see that. It's encouraging, and to know so much too. and to actually not just talk about it, but actually come out and see how it's done. Because canvassing, it's interesting, but it can be hard if you don't know what to do, what to say, and like even if you just come out, just to observe and see what's going on, how things are dealt with, and how we talk to the public and answer questions. So the more people come out with us, the more often they do, they would be more confident. Regarding, the situation for young people, me and you were, of a different generation. We've already had our kind of like our school or college, we're now working. And when I look at people coming through school and college now, the freedoms are already, been taken away. Now, before I came on here tonight, there was a video done by a well-known activist there in Cork, talking about a professor in law in UCC, trying to take the rights of students away around the exemption issue of maths already before the college year even starts. I made a statement. Now, this guy is a professor in law and is already trying to break the law of the land by ignoring the exemption which is attached in the law. So that's not a great start, and that doesn't really help any students who are already anxious about, fees and accommodation and college and being away from home for the first time, and then they'd face this as well. And really, wearing a mask in college has nothing to do with, your education. The freedom to go to college it's a human right if you want to do that, and also the freedom to go to work. But students need to use this time to start fighting back. I also seen an article recently, students can't get accommodation. It's even worse this year. They have to spend about €15,000 a year, and they're staying in hotels, and that's expensive as well. So I don't know.
What's the opinion of the people of your own age, Alex and Charlotte, just to the general, this type of politics? Would most of your peer group be kind of centre left or on the far left? Is it a cold house for anybody who's... Charlotte, do you want to take that one?
Far left.
Charlotte, just your camera's a wee bit high, Charlotte. We can't get your whole face. Yeah, bring it down a wee bit there. Yeah, we can't. Maybe a bit more. Yeah, that's just that direction. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll be a lot of anger for society. So much has happened to them with the lockdowns and not being able to see their friends, not being able to go out, that they have to kind of, I feel like they've all had to kind of put that anger. It went on unfortunate causes like things like matter, and there was these sort of movements like putting them into this horrible situation. Things like genderism and abortion, and there's a lot of bad culture at the moment with young people. This doesn't seem to be like there's a lot of direction. I think Alex could probably agree with me on a lot of that.
Yeah, I can't disagree with anything there. The attitude has been one of complacency and compliance. I think it's got to a point where we've had these legislations and mandates put on us for so long, and deliberately for so long, nearly like a carrot on the end of a stick, so that when the government does turn around and say, oh, well, we want to introduce this mandate and this mandate, that everyone will just jump at it and say, yes, I'll do that, no problem, just to return to some sort of normal. But of course, everything that's happened over the last year and a half has been far from normal. So they're pushing this out further and further, and people are just agreeing and complying the whole time, in the hopes that they'll get a little bit of freedom back for everything they've sacrificed. But in fact, it's acting the opposite way to that. I think you're on mute there, Cathal.
Yeah, the media, I think, is just, it's hysterical. Down south and the north, I watched, they did this broadcast in UTV Live yesterday from a hospital. They were plunked there for the whole half hour, which is compromising health and safety as it is. But they were almost whipping up the hysteria, saying we have to go into lockdown. Why can't we have vaccine passports like they have down south? At least we don't have that at the minute in the north. I know Wales has brought that in today, actually. but they're wanting to go down that line. I mean, we saw that in effect in Donegal over the summer, where you're not allowed to go inside for a drink inside, but certain bars are allowing underage drinkers in. I mean, what's going on there? No, it's just the hysteria that's whipped up by the media. I think they're very complicit, and there's no mainstream media as asking the proper questions. It just seems to be it's like a single party state. Wouldn't you agree with that, Karen? In Donegal, we saw that at full.
Yes, I felt maybe, I know we know a lot, but maybe living in urban areas, we're getting information, we're linking in with each other. It's easy to kind of network and do this kind of work and then meet up physically. But because where we were, it was very remote, and I felt all the information wasn't getting to the local people in the village that we were in. And so what we knew, we kind of took for granted. So we were trying to kind of maybe explain rights to certain people. It wasn't working. Whereas if you'd done it down here, people were listening more. So it was more difficult in remote areas like Donegal, where they're not getting the information we're getting. And they're kind of enclosed maybe. And that was very frustrating. It's probably a shock really, because we didn't think it'd be as strict as it was. Something simple as going in for coffee and, going into a pub, it a bit more relaxed where I am, but not up where we were in Donegal.
Yeah.
It's really a pity.
But Charlotte and Alex, just a question: do you get any abuse from your peer group when people say, this party here or this Freedom Party or National Party or whatever, that they're just a bunch of old racists? And what do you want to be associated with a group of old racists like that? Or do you get much of abuse like that, or what way do you deal with that?
I've gotten a fair bit of flack from classmates. I mean, at the start of this, I never wanted to wear the mask, and I'd always be the first to put up my hand and be like, question it, because the teachers are full of the fear mongering, and students, I could feel everybody in a whole classroom just be completely against me, and they'd be like, oh, she's asking a question again, and oh, she's giving them hassle. None of them actually wanted to deal with it, and I understand, we're all young and we don't want to deal with this, but at the start of this, I understood that it was either I deal with this or I suffer in the long term, but nobody else unfortunately felt like that. To do with the Irish Freedom Party and National Party, yeah, they're not recognised by any of us. They're completely dismissed because they're just going against the narrative. There's no discussion that's even had, even saying racist or something. They just people our age just kind of understand they're just kind of outcasts, that kind of way. Unfortunately, they don't give them the time, but I really am calling out to the young people at this moment in time, and it doesn't even matter where you stand on the political spectrum. I think all young people need to really educate themselves on politics at the moment. And come 2025, they need to make the right decision, because they're facing a lot of lockdowns. They're even speaking of climate lockdowns at the moment. So it's a scary thing in the future.
Private lockdowns.
Yeah, climate change lockdowns. That's what they're discussing.
Oh, right. Climate ones, right.
Yeah.
Alex, are you getting any of that in grief yourself? Or?
Yeah, there is a real feeling out there of going against the grain, saying anything that goes against the narrative. But I've said it from the start, it's a very, very scary thing when you've got a single narrative like this being pushed.
Yeah.
And anyone, doctors, scientists, politicians, anyone questioning things with regards to anything is being instantly dismissed and pushed aside, and people are led to believe that they're crazy and stuff like that. So as Charlotte said, I would call on young people to really even notice that and think for themselves. I suppose they really do listen to. Young people these days aren't educated enough in politics, in the sense that they'd be more inclined to listen to what their parents have to tell them, because their, say, family have been voting for the same political party for generations. But I mean, times change, and we need to change with the times as well. So I would call on young people to really look and see what's going to benefit us in the future, because it's all well and good for say our parents' generation to vote now, but when we vote, we need to look at what's going to happen in 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the line, because that's that's really what's at stake here, not just the instant gratification you might get from going along with everything, you know.
Yeah, I noticed that myself. Like when we were up at Donegal, you know, if you weren't wearing a mask, I mean, the people were just jumping and saying, "Hey, put your mask on. You're not wearing your mask," you know. And these are kind of youngish people. And then we had the debate about it. It became a real cold house for anybody that was coming back and saying, "Well, there's an alternative view." And I don't know personally. Over the last year, I made this point. I've known 2 youngish people who have died of other things, not COVID. I don't know anybody who's died of COVID. I know one person that got it, but then he had the vaccine, so he got it still. I've known that there are other things that people are dying of, you know. But yeah, it does become you just get ground down with that narrative and you just almost go along with it. I mean, Charlotte, you're saying about in class, you're saying, oh, you can feel the vibe coming, oh, she's asking a question again. But you can feel the tutting going on when you're trying to speak and you're the person not, oh, he's the one that's not wearing the mask or whatever, you know. Karen, do you get that?
Sorry, did you say Karen or Charlotte?
Karen, sorry, you're on mute, Karen.
All right, sorry about that. I wanted to say something about what Charlotte was saying about class. I know it's the school boards that are making the decision on a guideline, not the Department of Education enforcing the masks. So it really depends on the school. And unfortunately, Charlotte's in a school where they wear. Now, there is a situation going on in Dundalk for the last 2 weeks where a mother is going against the Dundalk Grammar School, I believe, and she's actually protesting outside the school every day until her son gets back in. Now, he has a genuine case of exemption. Everything is given to the principal, and he's still been told to leave the class, and he can't carry on in the 5th year at school. In fact, the Gardaí were called, I think it was only a few days ago, and they were told to leave. So really, I think students, while you're saying your classmates were giving you a hard time, I know classmates can do that because they're quite young. They don't understand the implications of what's actually happening in the background. But the school itself, the principal and the teachers should actually take those kids into line. They shouldn't be given the student who's actually having, a problem with wearing a mask, a hard time. It's bad enough. They're there to go to school. And in this case, with Dundalk, they were harassing the mother outside. They were harassing them outside the windows and outside the school. Nothing was done about it except one teacher stood up to them. So the whole thing about going to school has been turned on its head. It's no longer a normal experience. And that's wrong. I mean, me and you went to school, Colin, as normal every year. There was no hassle, just come back to school in September. But now children are being faced with this problem of the schools going against their exemption.
Yeah.
So
That's illegal.
Universities used to be a real hotbed of anti-establishment thinking, but now they're the most pro-establishment bodies that there are. It's turned completely on its head. Charlotte, you were saying you were talking about going to Trinity, or you were applying. How's that going, or are you?
Yeah, so I've got accepted to Maynooth, so but there's a few more offers, so we'll see how it goes. And also in response to what Karen was saying,
Is that for next week? For next year,
next Monday, yeah.
Starting next Monday.
Yeah, well, orientation and then the following Monday class time.
So that's at Maynooth.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Oh, very good, gorgeous.
Very good.
Is that with all the priests? Is that where the priest training is going to be going on?
Sorry?
Is that where the priesthood training is?
Oh yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Brilliant.
But Karen, sorry, I just want to say in response to what you were saying about the normality, I was trying to get, back to the most, normality. They wouldn't let me off. I said I had asthma, I said, look, they said, okay, well, look, compromise, you can wear the visor. I was like, oh, fine, I'll wear the visor. And I've had arguments with teachers like, come on, are we seriously going to play this little, role that placing a piece of plastic in front of my face is doing anything? But, what's it called? Then it came to my leaving cert, and the principal and the year head, they were standing outside and they were saying to me, sorry, Charlotte, you're not going to be able to wear the visor. I hadn't worn the mask in, months then. So, they were basically bullying me into wearing it for the Leaving Cert, unfortunately. And of course they had to get their way because they were like, oh, it's the SEC rules. And I had to wear it, and I wasn't used to it, and it was absolutely panicking, and it was absolutely horrible. And the thing that parents need to know is that there is a way out of the the mask situation. I mean, obviously, it sounds like the person in Dundalk has done everything, but the thing about it is that it was only Norma Foley, who was just a minister for education, who just pointed her fingers at all the schools and said, you guys all need to wear masks in secondary school. Unfortunately, there wasn't actually any legislation. And I did say this to the school. I said, there is no legislation. You're just doing this because, top down rules, and they were like, yeah, well, just wear it. They knew fine well that I knew my rights. And I didn't want to keep on doing it because I had regretted grades that year. But that's the reality of it, and they know. And you can also for kids out there, you can also question the school and say, can I have a letter saying you're going to refuse me my education, because that will get them into legal things that they don't want to get into. But there is a few people in the country that are opposing it, thankfully.
Yeah.
And just what you were saying, Karen, about the school boards and all introducing the stuff, and it's them that's actually pushing it. I just want to say on that note, I do feel really sorry for the students, because there are a lot of people who know that this is wrong and they should have a choice. But at the same time, there's a lot of students that are, as Cathal said, completely brainwashed by this kind of left-wing narrative. Because I'm going into my final year now next week, and I was in contact with a number of students yesterday about working on group projects, and one guy openly texted into the group and said, look, I'll see how things go, because I'm not comfortable working with people in the sense of close contacts and vaccination status. And I just thought that was jaw-dropping. I couldn't believe one of my peers could even contemplate turning around and saying something like that, So I do really feel sorry for people like that, because I don't think it is their fault. They just can't contemplate what really is like the other side of the story. They're just going completely with this kind of single narrative,
How can they build up any immunity to it then if they're not going to interact? And, if younger people, would they not be better to sort of get it? If you're a younger person, you're going to have no risk.
Well, that's what a normal person might think. But what we've been led to believe for the last year and a half is if you hug Granny, you're going to kill her. Anyone walking around without a mask or a visor or whatever is carrying this virus. That was a year ago. Now anyone who's walking around without a vaccine passport is going to kill you. Sure, they were just talking in the EU about a pandemic of the unvaccinated. So it's you. Young people, you might think, normally you think young people are invincible, and that's what they always would like to believe themselves. But now they've really begun to question that, and not in a good way at all. And they're believing exactly everything that they're being told,
Yeah. I mean, that's one issue, and we've had a chat about that. But there's also, things. Ireland has a major housing crisis at the minute as well. We obviously have a policy on that. What do we do about the housing crisis? It's talked about every single week in the media. We do think that one of the factors in that is uncontrolled immigration, and we have to control our borders. And it would be better if we had controlled our borders in terms of this virus. We could have maybe kept the virus out of the country, which we didn't do. But we do have we want a sensible immigration policy, and we want to prioritise our own taxpayers and ratepayers. What's the feedback? Obviously, Karen, you're on board. What's the feedback amongst the two younger guys on that sort of thing? And do they get any grief when they bring up that type of subject? Anybody?
Well, yeah, I think it's an issue that really should be discussed, but it's one of them kind of elephant in the room issues that nobody ever wants to bring up in fear that they might be discriminating against a certain group of people. But of course, especially being in the EU, the borders are quite open for a number of people to come in, and it's open game then with regards to housing. So it makes the lives of Irish people, and especially young people like myself and Charlotte coming up that it will be next to impossible in the next few years to get any sort of accommodation. And just what Karen was saying there, even student accommodation has become ridiculously expensive, that people are now even trying to stay in hotels and stuff like that.
They're doing it in the north as well, yeah. I mean, I do think it does put pressure on the housing stock. It's very, very hard to find a house, even to buy one. I think all of this extra people coming in does put pressure on the housing availability of it. And it makes it, when you do have situations, I know down south you have a 2-list system where people that have been on a waiting list will get leapfrogged by people coming from other countries, which isn't fair. It isn't fair to the taxpayers of the country. Karen, what do you think?
Well, I mean, I just do feel sorry for young people. I don't know why they're not more angry than they are, in relation to the availability or the ability to get a house. Because when I was growing up, I could see, we see our parents owning their own house, or even the ability to buy their own house. Even if it was only one kind of like a one-wage house, it still had the ability to get a house. It wasn't a huge issue, and the government was able to buy to build houses when there wasn't much money around. But yet we're deemed a very rich country, and we can build all these houses. But they're being bought up by outside entities. We have private companies buying all these apartments, and they're being given over to big tech employees or people who can afford to pay high rents, and they're not even available to people to buy.
Yeah.
And like there's apartments going up in Drimnagh now. I pass them every day going to work on the bus, and they're just flying up. But they're going to be given over to people who can afford high rent. Not going to be available to people who are on low rent or low income families, or maybe people who are on an average wage. They're not going to be for the average person on the street.
Yeah.
So I mean, the chance of you owning your own home is zero, and that's absolutely disgraceful.
Well, for younger people, it seems the prospects are very difficult. I mean, I know in the north at the minute, they're saying that since the backlog in healthcare, we've got the worst waiting lists now in the UK and Ireland. In the north, they said that the waiting lists are now saying to you, if you need to go to the hospital, don't go unless it's absolutely necessary. So you're being told now you cannot really go. You're discouraged from going to the hospital to avail of the health service. And I would ask the question, do we have the capacity for bringing in extra people when they're telling us that you can't even go to the hospital here? So how can they be bringing in extra people? The two things don't add up to me,
Yeah, I personally have heard stories from actually a Croatian man. He was telling me, obviously he knows a lot of other Croatian people in Ireland. They come over, lovely, advantage of being a part of the EU. And they went in the PUP, they got the social welfare, they got a house, and they go back to Croatia. They sublet the house that they were handed by the government and kept the PUP. And unfortunately, none of these gets looked into. And this man had actually, given pointers, emailed officials saying that there's this corruption going on, and got no response. And that is the reality of what's happening with uncontrolled immigration, even between, in Europe. And, the housing crisis, there's all these, things coming out now that the Fianna Fáil government are doing. I think at the end of the day, there's not a lot of competition with the banks. The mortgage, there's a lot of problems with the mortgages. I also think that the government needs to kind of move back, stop intervening, maybe deregulate some sort of, the building industry and things like that, so that it will allow more competition, and hopefully that does usually what's the word, speed up building and developing new houses as well. I don't think it's just off the government's fault. I think sometimes if they come away, it'll let the market settle itself, and houses will where there's money has to be made, it'll be made.
Yeah. I mean, I just made a comment there. I just think it's very dishonest from political parties to ignore that the immigration is a factor in the housing crisis. It's almost as if they've been bought off. Some people make the point that they've been bought off by the EU to say nothing about it. Like certain parties used to say something about it, but they don't anymore. It means then people like us get labelled as immigrant bashers, which we're not. We're just trying to have an open, honest debate about it. We know it's not the only factor, but it is a factor. And then it was discussed years ago. I mean, I think Fine Gael used to have a policy on it, but now they just don't even talk about it at all.
Immigration is one thing, Cathal, but like a lot of my peers, a lot of my friends, in fact, want to leave the country. They say, the country's it's gone so bad that what's the point of me staying here? If you look, there's a joke about the country's greatest export being nurses. They go to college here, graduate, and then off they go to the States or the UK or Australia, and they're gone. So with regards to uncontrolled immigration, yes, the EU borders are open and everyone's welcome to come. But in that respect, then there's so many Irish people want to leave because, well, there's no prospects for me. I can't get a job. I can't get a house. So what's left for me in this country? And the government is completely ignoring their point of view on that. But again, people are afraid to bring this up to them.
Yeah, and then it forces people to live further and further away from where they're maybe working, and they've got commutes. Well, before the lockdown, anyway, they did. Yeah, yes, it's very sad that we're back to a scenario where our young people are just emigrating, and half of the doctors go over to Australia, as you touched on there, and nurses and everything. So we're exporting all our people, and we're just been replacing. And with you want to talk about abortion as well as another big topic that we discuss. It does seem to be where all our young women are wanting to have abortions uncontrolled. I don't know what you feel about that, Charlotte. But so it's like abort, replace. What's your opinion on? I'll ask you, Charlotte, since you're a female. Abortion. How do you feel about that debate?
Yeah, well, I mean, I came from completely pro-choice. Like, I mean, since I was 11, I was just only told, one side of the argument, and unfortunately I never heard the pro-life, and maybe that was just the way the media was always skewed. It never allowed for a pro-life argument. And then I saw a podcast and a woman was on and she was talking about pro-life, and I was like, oh, how have I never heard this, and it completely changed my mind on that. I think it's terrible in Ireland. I think it was 20,000 babies were killed since the legislation came into act. And it doesn't stop at that though. At the moment, Ireland is at 12 weeks is when it can, it's done. But it doesn't stop at that. I still see people that are my age posting things like about having it more accessible, having it longer, later term abortions. It doesn't stop. There's no moral code. There's nothing. There's no moral compass. Once you've given, when the people voted for that, they gave them the inch, and now it's just gone, berserk. And unfortunately, people are looking for it to be, a lot more accessible later term. And it just goes to show you it's a society without values and without direction. And unfortunately, it probably is because of the decline of religion. And I say that, not as a religious person, but, you can see in Irish society that there is no, set value system, and it has left a lot of people kind of, confused and angry, and they don't really understand, like politically, they don't really understand what they really stand for. They feel like they stand for something, but they're really not too sure.
Do you have any friends in your peer group that would be pro-life? Girls?
No, because unfortunately it's the whole rape case that gets everybody in the argument, and I used to think that for years, and then I heard that, well, it's actually, I think it was rape and incest is often just 1% of all abortions. And it's also that a lot of the time the abortion of a baby after traumatic incident doesn't necessarily help with your trauma. And there's a lot of support groups for people who have aborted babies, and that completely, I saw a whole different side of it, and I saw that abortion isn't actually a solution to it. It's just a further problem.
Two wrongs don't make a right. I mean, I was under the impression that the hard cases that they talk about were catered for under the law anyway. So why do you have to open the floodgates for all the other non-hard cases just because of those that are dealt with and would be dealt with under criminal law anyway? If it's rape or incest, the chances are you're going to know who the person perpetrated, and then it would be dealt with under criminal law. So having an abortion is not necessarily going to eradicate, as you're saying, it just adds extra trauma.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
What about Alex? Any of your mates, would they be coming from a pro-choice or pro-life standpoint, or?
I think it's nearly a matter amongst my friends anyway that they wouldn't talk. Some of them wouldn't necessarily talk about it, but there would be others who are very pro-choice, just in the fact that they're really casualising the whole situation, which is completely wrong from a moral point of view. If at all, it's shocking to see. As Charlotte said, they want to make it more accessible. I just completely disagree with it myself, but it is something that they're trying to normalise in society.
Yeah.
So there would be a lot of people leaning towards it and they don't see a problem. The problem is they don't see a problem with it whatsoever. So
the Catholic Church is kind of sold out on it. I mean, it's more or less going along with abortion is good. I mean, I thought it was very interesting last week when we saw the Pope was over visiting Hungary, and it's like Orban, the Prime Minister of Hungary, is like the last bastion of standing up for sort of Christian Europe, and he's at odds with the Pope, who's supposed to be looking out for the Christian Catholic faith. And they're talking about the difference of opinion between the two. But Orban is a lot of people on this, he's popular among certain sections, Karen?
Well, I just listened here about the pro-life, against pro-choice. It's disturbing that so many young people are still going along, and they want it to be maybe more accessible, maybe later in pregnancy. Now, I work in a hospital where we have babies being transferred into us from maternity hospitals, and they're often premature. And it's like you're 32 weeks, 34 weeks. That's not unusual. And to have an abortion at that point, be allowed to have an abortion at that point, is absolutely terrifying. I mean, these babies, they survive. They're just premature. And they might have problems. Like it could be an obstruction, it could be cardiac or whatever, but they still have a life. They are alive, and they're alive in the womb, they're alive outside the womb, and just because they're premature doesn't make it any less. And I just don't. And we see an awful lot of children, and they're Down syndrome, and yes, they can get cardiac problems, but it doesn't mean it's the end of it. They still have a good life. And
the argument for people who want abortions is it's my body, my choice. Well, they don't use that argument then for the COVID thing. So
that logic has completely gone out the window now. It's so funny to see if you're my body, my choice. Now you're a far right psychopath nearly.
Yeah,
because it's for the greater good,
Yeah, I know. Are you doing any more talks coming up, Alex? And what's the next ones on the plan for yourself?
The next talk I'll be doing won't be this Sunday. The following Sunday, most likely in Stephen's Green, and it'll just be a meetup again of young people and discuss the current matters. But then I do a video or two every week that I'd put out from the event.
I'll have to have a look out for that. Do you want to put the? I'll put this up on YouTube. Put the details of it, and we'll try and get a few more followers and stuff. And
sure, yeah, happy days.
And do you get much of an audience? Is there many people coming?
That's the thing. That's the interesting part, Karen. With regards to people turning up, it might be 5 people one week. I think the most people had was 20 another week. But then online, I think the most views we got about 40,000 views one week online. So it goes around online fairly quick, but it's disappointing to see that people are happy to sit back and play keyboard warrior and not actually stand up for themselves and come out and say anything. I mean, it's easy to sit on your couch and watch a video and hit a like button, but unless you're going to actually stand for yourself and come out and let your voice be heard or whatever you like, or demonstrate, then what good is it really doing? You have to ask yourself that question.
Yeah. No, I've seen such a reaction, and I did see yourself and John Caulfield doing those speeches around July, and that was all going on around the time we had the convention rallies, and I was really impressed by what you were saying. And there's another guy there with dark hair from Galway, I believe. He was very good. But I've seen the reaction to John's speeches, like in July. I mean, obviously, people are listening to young people. We want to see young people, because what I found was that when this all kicked off and people were going in their rallies with the yellow vests and that, young people weren't out much. It was all the older group of people,
Yeah.
my age, and we weren't seeing young people really until February of this year, when we had the incident in Grafton Street. That's when we saw young people. It took a while for young people to kind of start coming on board and starting to get out. We're seeing more now, but it took a while it took several months nearly for young people to kind of, to wake up or to get involved and just to come out and do a rally on the streets. And why is that, do you think? Is it because
it basically took us a while kind of to unite, but I think exactly then was it February that a few group chats kind of got going on, and we all kind of united, and we realized, oh, there is a few other office in the country, not a whole lot of us, but I think there is a good few out there that are kind of just hiding, and we haven't really kind of reached out to them yet. But obviously sending an email to the Irish Freedom Party, or even into YouTube, and if you want to get involved in the anti-lockdown movement, obviously, and even just to meet up with like-minded people, I think that's really important.
Absolutely, yeah. Alex, what's the Facebook link? If you got a link there, I'll put it up on the comments here.
Yeah, I can type it into the comments there, actually.
Right.
Try there. Oh, I can send it to you there, chat. But yeah, you can. I mean, people are more than welcome to check out the videos, but I'd encourage them obviously to participate more so with the likes of, say, that or the Irish Freedom Party, people who are actually actively doing stuff.
Yeah. And have you approached, you're not a member of any party at the minute, Alex? No?
No, I'm not. I sent it into I don't know, does that go into the comments or the private chat there? That's the Instagram page I have set up. So you should be able to see it there.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah. Is that Instagram? I don't think I'm not on it.
Yeah, that's on Instagram. There's a Telegram as well, but it's not as active. It's difficult to get members over onto that, but there's no Facebook set up as of yet. But it was a case of, as Charlotte said, kind of February-ish, people started getting talking. But before that, I mean, I was quite scared. All the young people I've spoken to were there. Oh, I thought I was the only one. And that's what you kind of hear. But once you get talking to one or two people, you really start to see that there are kind of grassroots movements sprouting up all around the place. So when I started that group, it was a case of trying to unite as many people as possible. So I mean, hopefully the online videos do help to even raise some sort of awareness. But if anything, it's to let people know that they aren't alone in the whole thing, and you're not the only one,
And those online videos on that Instagram then, yeah?
Yeah. They're the majority of which are on the Instagram.
Right. And it's not on Twitter or anything at the minute, no?
No, not yet.
Right,
There's been a few pages sharing around. I know the Irish Inquiry were there one week, and there's been a few other kind of Facebook pages and news outlets there. So people have just been sharing it around. And then myself and John Caulfield were speaking in Donegal there. Was it a month ago, Charlotte, was it? They organised a protest up there. So it was great to be able to go there to maybe a place where you wouldn't get as much of a turnout as, say, Dublin, and just to get people involved there.
Whereabouts in Donegal was it?
It was in Letterkenny in Market Square.
Right. Charlotte, you were thinking about trying to do some sort of a youth wing of certain parties when how's it? Did you get in contact with anybody like Colin Ogue or anybody like that?
No, but I definitely will. I think, I'm calling out to YouTube now. So any young people that are watching this and they like the Irish Freedom Party, please, join my youth wing. It's up and coming anyway. But yeah, like I'm definitely going to, when I get into college, I'm going to start those political societies that aren't just, Marxist and left wing and yourself.
You have to have it. There's no point in everybody disagreeing. There has to be a debate. Has to be some sort of.
No, I don't think I've seen in all the colleges of Ireland. I don't think I've seen one political society that wasn't left wing or Fianna Fáil.
I agree.
That's centre right.
But I always make the point that the debates are between the centre left and the far left. There isn't even a centre or a centre. Anybody who's just to the right of centre left is deemed far right.
Yeah.
It's almost like a dust bowl when you try and say something, people just look right and says, "What?" All right, look, brilliant to have you coming in, guys, and we'll do something like this again. And unless anybody's any other thing they want to chip in before we wrap it up, 45 minutes is a pretty good chat. But unless anybody wants to come in with any more, we'll say Gurmila Moyagav, and don't forget to like and subscribe this channel. I've named it CJ Gaelga at the minute, but it's Drogheda Irish Patriots was the original name. I'll probably go back to that at some point.
The youth wing is coming anyway.
The
youth wing is coming.
The youth wing is coming.
Yeah.
Great.
And if there's any message I would leave, especially young people with, it's when it comes to the polls the next time, remember who locked you down. Remember why you can't buy a house, and remember why you might want to emigrate. But most importantly, remember that you do have a choice, and your voice needs to be heard. Fate of the country is in your hands.
Brilliant. Yeah. 100%. Absolutely. Karen, do you want to sign off with any?
Well, I just want to say something about what Alex saying earlier on about the immigration. But it used to be a choice, but you look at other countries, they're in the worst boat. I mean, most time people go to Canada, Australia. Australia's in a very bad way. It kind of even limited to where you can go, and now unless you go to Sweden or Britain, and it is terrible that we're losing our nurses, because we're losing our nurses from my hospital. But what we need to do, maybe the government, and they need to pay their nurses properly, and the doctors. Well, the doctors get plenty of money, but the nurses definitely don't, especially in the beginning. But they need to have some kind of commitment that when they finish their college, they need to stay in the country for 3 years, and that will keep them here a good 3 years at least.
Yeah,
they can't be skipping off into another country. They stay here and they commit to 3 years.
They pay back the investment that they've had in the education here has to be fed back into the country here, surely.
Back into the system, and we need to be able to do that.
Yeah.
We are gaining from the Filipinos coming over here, and they're doing great work. But then the Filipinos are losing their nurses to us. So it's like we need to be able to hold on to our Irish nurses. It has to be a commitment of 3 years at least.
Okay, Karja.
Okay, listen, that's great talk. Well done.
Guys, we'll do it again at some point. Good luck with your endeavours over the next couple of weeks and months, and we'll see you all again soon. Becky Mayer, Steph.
Bye.
Karja. Thanks, Ron. Thank you.
Cheers, guys.